Hello, Jennifer Villarreal here.
And Rocio Vallejo.
This is the Sales from the Heart Show, the place where business meets heart and soul. Welcome back, everyone. We had a great guest on last week, Bob Lambert, and no, Rocio didn't grow a goatee and turn into a man. It's a great show. Make sure that you check that out. But today we also have a fantastic show for you today, right?
Right. How to stay the course.
Yeah.
Right.
How to stay on course. So, have you ever felt like your business is coming along pretty well, but then you just hit one of those days? Maybe you're bringing in clients, you're generating income, but then just something throws you off.
Right. So you have some kind of a run-in with a client, a contract falls through, you just have a really bad day.
You're getting a little discouraged, maybe?
Right.
Yeah. And so you start wavering off that course, right? And we're going to talk about some of those quick tips that you can implement to get back on track, because this can happen to all of us. You might have start out your day really great and then just something happens. I had a little moment, I'm not going to lie. Last week, it was a great day for me. It was when I went to 560 AM, the radio station, and I was feeling great. But then I got a text message and an email from somebody who really wasn't a happy person.
Mm-hmm.
I should say, in general, it's somebody that I haven't spoken to in about a year. And they kind of started to put a little damper on it, on top of me not wearing probably the best outfit to wear. Even though it was on radio, I also had a film guy there, and I just kind of felt off.
Right.
And so when you feel a little off, then what else does that do to our mindset, to the way that we engage with people? Do we miss out on opportunities, the little blessings that are all around us? And we're just not able to get past it because our mind is being clouded with all this nonsense, pretty much. I mean, some of it is valid, right? I get it. But come on, my outfit was bad for photos and for video. Who cares? So I get a stylist now.
Right, yeah.
But it was bothering me, more so being triggered by somebody that had contacted me that I really didn't want to engage with. And so can you relate to this at all, Rocio?
Completely. And it's all those little things. Sometimes it doesn't have to be something that's huge, but all these little things add up. And then you just get that really yucky feeling. And what bothers me is that I can be very aware of what I'm feeling, but I don't know what to do to shake it, you know? So, I want to get into finding out what some of those tips are.
All right. So we're all about being transparent here,
Yes.
being a little vulnerable. Maybe it doesn't always put the best spotlight on us, but hey, that's okay, right? And it's okay for you as well. We want to also make sure that you stay connected to us. Feel free to keep sending those messages. That's been working out really well. So you can send a text, or you can also give a call and leave a voicemail if you don't get me live. And that number is 847-903-3983. Of course, also, you can tune into previous episodes on the Sales from the Heart Show through Planeta X. You can subscribe there. And also, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. That'll get you plugged into some other things that we're doing as well. And that's, of course, Sales from the Heart on YouTube. All right. So,
Number one,
when we're feeling like things are off course, usually we have to look at ourselves first.
right. You need to check that attitude.
Yeah. So having a little bit of attitude and having that little flavor, that's okay, right? But if it's being something that's detrimental to how you're engaging with people, it starts to put you in a funk, that can actually snowball pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then before we know it, you're not engaging with people, you're not, interacting on social media, you're not going to events, and you're just kind of retreating.
Totally avoiding everyone and everything. I am guilty of having done that in the past. Yes.
Yeah. So let's dive into that past moment when you were there, Rocio. What was it that was so difficult for you to be able to shift that attitude?
I don't know. I think I just was kind of stuck in that place of just doubt. Should I be doing this? Am I on the right path? Is this really what my purpose or my calling is? Maybe I need to refocus and, start a new business doing, God knows what. So I think it was just my frame of mind. I didn't know. It was the not knowing that kept me stuck.
Right. Okay. And so you're bouncing off these ideas in your own head.
Yes. Instead of calling my coach.
Well, maybe you didn't have a coach at the time, right?
Right.
So I think it's really important, number one, to create that community of support. And we've talked about this on previous shows too. Be careful who you're picking up the phone to call, because it could be somebody that's feeding that maybe
Yes.
negativity, feeding those fears, projecting their own fears onto you. Ask yourself, is it somebody that has achieved success in what it is that you want to do, right? Do you have that community of support that you can go to, that maybe there's other like-minded, like-hearted entrepreneurs, that are doing what you want to do as
Yeah,
well?
that community is so extremely important. So extremely important. And definitely having that one person or those couple of people that you can always confide in, and then can slap some sense into you, right?
Yeah, exactly. And slap with love,
With
right?
love, always with love. Yes.
Yeah. So also, are you being a little too hard on yourself? That's another
Right.
thing that I can find that people can encounter. What about you? Do you find yourself being maybe a little too hard on?
I think that's just what it is. That comes for me, at least personally. I'm my worst critic, and I'm extremely hard on myself.
Give us an example of that. Like, I was beating myself up about wearing the wrong, outfit
Right.
to this radio interview and messing up my so-called photos. When in reality, I'm just looking at it probably a little bit differently than most people would. Maybe they're not necessarily looking at the dress that I'm wearing, or what my hair looks like or something like that. I mean, it's more about the content that I'm delivering as opposed to how I look.
Right.
So, what about for yourself?
I think for me, it's maybe just, it's always kind of the same thing. I think it always kind of comes back to not feeling like I'm cut out for this, or I'm always coming up short. I think that's a huge one. So yeah, I mean, as far as, yeah, I think that's what it is.
So I think it's important to take a look at where you started maybe a year ago, maybe even 3 months ago. I mean, even
Right.
when we were just doing the show, you and I were extremely awkward. We didn't know we were going to be in front of the video camera. We thought it was just going to be radio.
We were waiting for someone to call.
Yes, we were waiting for people to call. We didn't even know that we were going to be on for an hour straight, no breaks. We
Right.
found that out right before we went on air.
We thought there were going to be breaks.
Right. I totally felt uncomfortable in front of a video camera just several months ago, and then we just took this leap of faith, and this has grown into other opportunities. We've done some restaurant review shows for Lalo's out in Glenview, Tacos Tequilas in Chicago. We have a few more coming about. We would have never guessed that we
Right.
would have been doing these things, right? And people can probably say, well, why are they the expert in that? Or why do they get to do that? Well, I think it's because we stepped out of that zone
That
and we
comfort
just said,
zone. Yeah.
exactly, you know what? God, use us the way that you want to use us to get these messages across, to impact these lives, to have fun, or whatever it may be.
And I think it's, again, going back to changing your attitude, changing your perspective. I remember in the beginning, I would just get so incredibly nervous. And I knew that I wanted to do this because it was something new and exciting. But I did have my doubts. And why does anyone want to listen to me? Or I'm horrible in front of the camera.
Do you remember what I told you?
I think one of the things you would always say, and I tried, and that now I think I try to really do it, is just have fun with it. Just have fun with it. Let things relax and let things just flow, out of you or through you the way that they're meant to. So I
Yeah.
do that. I
Yes.
try to do that
And
now.
then also remember, it's not always about you.
It's not about you.
right?
It is about me.
Rosia wanted everything to be about her. But it's not. It's
Right.
not always about you. It's about the lives that you're impacting, the stories that you're sharing with other people that they can relate to,
Right.
right? That connection that you have with them. That's really important. That's the true essence of our business, the communication that we have with people. It's connecting and providing even more than just that product or service, right? That's what's going to differentiate you from a lot of other people out there. And how can you incorporate who you are with what you do in your business and the results that people get? Then you'll start to attract more of those people that you want to work with.
Right. So number one, check your attitude. Tip would be to definitely surround yourself around a community that can support you and help you change your perspective. Right. Okay.
Exactly. And then remember, it's not always about
About
you.
you.
It's about who you're serving. Remember the definition of sales. It's about being of service, right? That's what the S stands for. The A, we break that down, being authentic. The L, we're listening, we're being engaged, and yes, the last S stands for being spiritual / stubborn. I know we're all stubborn at times, right?
Right.
So, incorporate that spiritual component, and that will actually keep you centered and not allow that worry and that doubt to keep coming up.
Sounds good. All right.
All
So
right.
number 2, right?
Yeah, the second thing that I'm hearing from people that can kind of put them in a little bit of a funk is not getting paid on time by their clients. I'm really shocked by this because it happens to a lot more people than I even realized out there, where they're chasing after their clients, they're sending out invoices, they're trying to manage everything, and that starts to weigh on them.
And yeah, definitely. How does this make you feel? I know I've encountered several experiences where this has happened, and I know people who, whenever you bring up just the issue, I've worked with people, where we just bring up the issue of money, and they don't want to talk about it. They themselves don't even know what they're worth, or what their business, or what their services are worth, or their product is worth. Yeah, you have to be able to have these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, I think that's probably number one, where we have to address any of those money blocks. Do you not feel deserving that you deserve this money? Number one. Do you feel that maybe you can't actually make that much money that fast, so you're kind of self-sabotaging?
Right.
That's something that could come up. What else do you think could come up around money blocks?
I think just being consumed with, what are they going to think? What are they going to think of? Are they going to think my prices are too high? Are they going to think my prices are too low? Were
they not happy with my service? Yeah,
yes.
all these other things come up, and right there, it's telling me that we have a money block, a mindset block, and we have to address that. Right? You might be, I guess, the way of how you're setting up your current process. You might be setting that up in a way that's feeding that self-sabotaging talk.
Right. I think for me, it was definitely that, worrying so much about what the other person was thinking about me. And again, it's changing that perspective, because they didn't want to work with me, or if they didn't feel that I was, the right fit for them, they wouldn't have signed my contract in the first place. Right. And then sticking to, like, having a system. I didn't have a system. And so I was letting weeks and days and weeks go by without them paying me when they had signed a contract saying that they would. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think people will push it as much as they know that they can. So let's touch on that for a little bit. It's that fabulous B word for Rocio, boundaries. We've talked about this before. This is one of her things that keeps reoccurring over and over and over, and you're learning how to address that so it doesn't. And you still have to give us an update on that book, Boundaries. Have you been making any progress on that, by the way?
I have. It's a really good book. Yeah.
It's called Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud. And what are, just a little side note here, some of the things that you're learning about boundaries, why it's so important for you?
Well, one thing that I realized, and I think this was my biggest struggle and kind of continues to be a bit of a struggle for me, is that I never knew what boundaries looked like. And I was surrounded by people that, had issues and still have issues with boundaries as well. And so in the physical world, and he talks about this, in the physical world, boundaries are easy to see, right? And this is my personal space, that's your personal space. But in our mind and in our hearts, we also have these boundaries that we have to let other people be aware of. Because if we don't make them aware of them, they will step into our space, right?
It sounds simple, but yet...
but it's so difficult. It really,
for some
at least
people, it's really difficult.
For me, it's really difficult. And I didn't notice as I started reading this book, I started to realize that, oh my gosh, that all these people around me have issues with it as well. And it consumes you. It was something that, like, I say myself, first I realized I have this disease called the disease to please. And
what is that called again?
The disease to please.
Right.
And it is a disease because I have so many times found myself saying yes when I really wanted to say no. No, I'm sorry, I don't have the time. No, I would love to, but I'm not interested. And so I either avoid a situation or a person altogether, or I say yes, and then I get really upset, and I let it affect everyone else and everything else around me.
Right. So you would avoid the person or the situation.
That was number one. Yes.
Right. And what did that do to you when you were avoiding that?
It made me mad. And that was just the thing.
Mad at yourself? Mad at the person?
Mad at myself, a little resentful towards them when they really just weren't aware of it. So how could I be upset with them, right?
You were missing out on other opportunities.
I was missing out on opportunities. I was finding that my schedule was just jam-packed, and more than half of the things on that thing were things that I didn't even want to do. And
so you weren't really able to focus on what was really important for your business or anything else that you wanted to do.
because I was so consumed with what everybody else
Right.
thought I should do. Yeah. So it's good. I suggest everyone go out and pick up a coffee.
Yeah. Or just contact me and
Or
I'll take you through it.
Or you could do that.
We can take you through it pretty easily.
No, but it helps. And
yeah.
it totally helps to have somebody that you can really, it's so funny because sometimes, and I tell you this all the time, not to go off track, but, I'll tell her, I'm so sorry for just like vomiting on you and always like venting. But you're really, and I've said it before, like the one person I know that I can go to with almost anything. And you always, steer me in the right direction. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I won't do that for everyone because I'm establishing those boundaries. So
I'm special.
yeah, she is the special one. Can you tell? No, I think it's really important to create that safe space, and I do that with my clients, and we do it more than just the business side of coaching because these personal things do leak in, right? And it's all part of who you are, and we want you to be your authentic self in business.
Right.
And so it's important to make sure that we release that. Plus, I think it's also important, and I've told this to you, Rocio, and I'm going to say it here too, like this is natural, it's normal, right? Especially with where you were starting, where you've come through from. Some people process differently as well. I mean, there's no right or wrong to it. So, and I call it out too if it's going a little bit too far. If we're ranting too much,
Right.
it's what are we feeding, subconsciously then? Are you trying to be the victim? Are you trying to self-sabotage? Are you staying stuck and not realizing that you're feeding that pattern? Right?
Or you're really good at making me laugh to kind of just lighten up the situation, which I think helps a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
We just need to change
Yeah.
your state of mind when you're falling into that funk. And that's what we're trying to say here. You're going off course. Let's talk about some of the mindset things as well as the practical things that we can do to stay upbeat, to stay not positive, but more so powerful. That positive bubble starts to burst every now and then, right? What's the opposite of positive? It's negative. So let's stay with something that's powerful, that's everlasting, that isn't going to crack under any type of pressure.
Right.
And that's what we're doing here. So we're setting up your boundaries. We're understanding what is your current process. Is it clear in your contract? But are you allowing these things to keep getting pushed off? If you were supposed to get that invoice paid or, what it states in your contract and it's a month or two later, we got to start looking at ourselves.
Right.
Right?
What are you allowing?
Exactly. Are you also just communicating via email as opposed to picking up the phone? Are you avoiding that
Right.
human interaction because you're not sure what they're going to say? Well, you have to be clear in your conviction and what is allowable, what isn't, and what you're willing to walk away from.
Right.
I can't tell
That's
you how
huge.
many times people will hang on to something. They're like, well, but I have the bills to pay and I have to do this. Listen, if that person didn't follow the way that you set it up because you know what works best for your clients as well as for yourself, then we need to walk away from that, right? And there will be more of your ideal clients that come in that you'll be able to work with. I guarantee you that, okay? You will have that because you're not going to be stressing out over here about the people that aren't working the way that you know what would work best for them.
I think that's huge. That a lot of people allow this time to pass and just hope that they will eventually get paid, right? Because they feel that if they do stick to the boundary that they've set, that these people are going to walk, and now you're going to leave all this money on the table, right? But what I've learned is the stress really worth it.
Exactly.
And what I've come to find is that most of the time it's not, because it's affecting what is really important to me. And those are the people in my life, my children, my husband. So sometimes you do. And I've learned that it's hard at first, but being okay with walking away.
Right.
Yeah. And then you
Exactly.
direct that energy into something that you really do enjoy. And yeah, that money will come.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. So, just to recap on that, understanding what your process is, maybe we need to retweak that process of how you're actually getting paid and when and how often. Number two, what are those boundaries that you have set up, or maybe you don't, and we need to get you comfortable with those things, right? And then number three, making sure that you're communicating effectively. That's going to be really important. Email sometimes isn't always the best way. You can always have a conversation first and then recap it in the email so you have it in writing. But are you avoiding having that conversation with people? That's going to be something that we want to address.
Right.
Okay? And then, of course, getting rid of those money blocks too. So let's talk about then this dissatisfied client, because
Okay.
sometimes people might encounter that. I think it's very rare. I work with really awesome people. I love the people that I work with, but once in a while you're going to have somebody that might not fit
Falls
best
through
with
the
your
cracks.
program.
Right.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
exactly. And I have a guarantee with my people that I work with. I have no problem having to refund somebody within the first 30 days if it doesn't necessarily work out, if it's not a fit. Although I've never had to do that in the past 2 years. It's just as long as I've been, with Sales from the Heart, launching Sales from the Heart, it's not something that comes in, but it's also a little bit of a cushion for me as well, because I don't want to work with a client that I'm not best fit with either.
Right.
Maybe somebody else would better serve them, or maybe they're not the type of client that I want, and somehow, they do kind of fall through, and I just would rather them be satisfied from that perspective. So I set those things up where I don't necessarily encounter the dissatisfied client because we establish that open communication. However, if they're not willing to communicate with you, what can you do? You've done your part. Don't constantly chase after people or try to prove yourself to somebody. You know your process works. You know your services work. Your products are delivering, etc. Then don't waver from that.
Right. And maybe it's not even the dissatisfied client. What if it's that client that's extremely needy or demanding or difficult? I don't know. I have to ask myself, if I encountered that, is that, a client that I would want to continue working with?
That's a really good point. Yeah, let's switch that over to dissatisfied to just disruptive.
Right.
Maybe a bit of an energy vampire for you. What do you recommend in your encounters with that? What would you have normally have done?
I think, again, having establishing boundaries.
But what would you have done before you knew what to do with that?
I think, and then we've talked about this before, but having being what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? Having these signs, or being able to determine what some signs that would hint towards this client being
Okay.
needy.
Okay, so let's say you've encountered the needy client.
Okay.
What would you do in that situation before you knew boundaries and seeing the red flags?
Okay.
What were some of those things that you were doing that was exhausting you? That was frustrating?
Okay. Now I understand. Sorry. I was answering all of their calls, emails, and texts as they were coming in, and that was, it was an insane amount. And it was, if I would get an email, a text, a Google chat, all almost simultaneously.
And why would you respond right away? What was going through your mind when you were
So
doing that?
again, it was the whole boundary thing, and this is something that I realized, is that I had worked with somebody amazing for a good chunk of time, and my boss didn't have boundaries. And I was just always under the assumption that as an event planner, you had to be accessible to your clients at all times. And so that is just what I was trying to do.
So
Again,
that was exhausting
trying to
you.
please, yes.
You're spending all of your energy over here with this, client that isn't your ideal client.
Right.
okay?
And then you have all these other clients that you have to, you
And the ones that you really do like, but then
Right.
your energy is kind of depleted by the time you are working with them because you're focusing on this one over
and then
here.
you're affecting these interactions with the clients that you do like, It's just
Right. And so how much is that costing you, really? Right. You have to be okay with letting go some people and establishing those boundaries. Now, I'm a firm believer in having that communication first and foremost before you just, chop off their heads. You want to be able to have that conversation. But again, if you start seeing these red flags, I'm sorry, one red flag, I'm done at this point because I can spot it pretty clearly. Before it might used to be 3, 4, 5, or I would say, oh, but I can help them and they're just going through a wrong time. I'm sorry, I'm not anybody's savior. There's only one savior, okay? So why was I trying to do that? What was going on internally with me that I had that disease to please as well?
Right.
Right? So we have to address that. And, if it's going to make somebody upset because you're holding firm with what works best for your clients as well as for you, then so be it. And they can go tell their friends that are probably similar to them, and they're going to actually screen for you.
Right.
So you're not going to attract more of those type of people, right? If somebody says, oh, but, Rocio, you're just so expensive, and that person goes and tells other people. Well, if somebody wants to listen to somebody else about that, being expensive or cheap or whatever, it's totally, it's relevant to that person. What does that mean?
It's not somebody you want to work with.
Yeah, exactly. That's like saying how long is a piece of string? I mean,
Right.
It's different for everybody, right? And also, what is your return that you're going to get? So what's the value that's there? If somebody can't see that, then maybe they're just not at the mindset of the client that you want to work with. Maybe they need something a little bit more basic.
Right. And I also think if you look back, you can start to pinpoint patterns, which is something that I was able to do. And see, oh my goodness, in this situation, I did this and this. And then in this other situation, I did almost the exact same thing. Why? What's causing me to do this? What is it?
Right.
And again, it's the not knowing. And unless you have somebody that can say, hey, this keeps coming up for you. It's a pattern that you need to address. Then you just keep moving forward and doing the same things over and over and over again, and you're that hamster on that wheel.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's true.
So I think, what you're referring to, Rocio, is we noticed something where you were repeating some patterns over and over, but you couldn't see it because you were in it. It was a different situation, so you thought it was a different experience.
Totally.
And you didn't connect the dots and see the pattern that was going on there.
Right.
So, yeah, that's really important. And if you need any help, assessing that, breaking that down, if you're finding that you're just stuck in this rut and you have this current challenge that keeps popping up, make sure you connect with us, okay? We're here for you for that.
Definitely.
All right. So basically, it's about, making sure that you're connecting with the right client and not dwelling on the ones that aren't.
Yes. So my question is how do you determine who your right client is?
Yeah.
What do we do?
Yeah. Okay. I don't think we have enough time in this segment to dive too deep into that. That's where I would say the non-traditional sales and marketing blueprint comes in. And I know, Rocio, I always mention this to you. You're probably like, oh, I'm tired of hearing about this blueprint. But do you see how it's so essential that we understand and we break down who your target audience is? And we get really, really specific with that. It's not probably what you think it is. It's not just about, okay, are they male or female? What age range are they? Where are they living? I mean, we dive really deep into who they are. Right. So then we can position yourself in the marketplace as an expert and authority to draw in your ideal clients. And we do that in a variety of different ways. So if you want more, info on how to break that down and you want this non-traditional sales and marketing blueprint, again, send me a message, 847-903-3983. But again, we have to understand who your target audience is by also understanding who you are too.
Right.
Right.
It's all
So
connected.
you were attracted to a certain audience, but that was also mimicking a little bit of you. But then once we kind of cleaned up a little bit of some of those patterns there, then you were starting to attract different types of people, sprinkled in with some from the past to see if you've really mastered this.
Right.
Right.
And I'm getting better.
Yes. You absolutely are. Good. So I think that also leads into looking if you're having some of these issues come up with not collecting money on time because you're spending time chasing them, right? You're dealing with clients that are disruptive. This is pulling you away from your sales and marketing efforts, right? So maybe sales are a little low. And of course, this is steering you off course. This is putting a damper onto things. Can you relate to this at all?
Yes, totally.
Okay. So we need to address what your current model is because when you're first starting out, or maybe if you've hit that little bit of a dip, we need to assess where you're at with your model. Then once you start increasing that, then we look at your model again and we make some more adjustments there.
Right.
Okay. So I think when it comes to sales and marketing, it's about rinsing, repeating, right? We rinse, we repeat. And then we have to try in something else sometimes, or we have to scrap something. And this is where I think people can get really frustrated. This is where they get desperate. This is where they say, well, that doesn't work. Well, maybe it didn't work back then because you were different back then than you are today.
Right.
So all of these things come into play. And then again, revisiting that blueprint for yourself. You know, what is your action plan mapped out for the next 3 months, 6 months, for a year? You know, are you staying focused on that? Are you staying on track? You know, when you're first starting out, about 4 or 5 hours, maybe 50% of your day should be focused on some type of sales and marketing efforts. And I think that a lot of people just get bogged down with all these different things that are pulling them in different directions, and they're not staying focused. And because they're not staying focused, that puts them in a funk, right?
It's all connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anything else that you want to share on some of these topics or questions that you think maybe others might have? I feel sometimes like we're just throwing out a bunch of info here, and it's not a one-size-fits all.
Right.
You know, it depends on where you're at in your business, where you're at personally, what we need to focus on. But this is a free resource that we like to provide for you, and we hear a lot of feedback from people that do find these videos to be helpful and inspiring, but I also want to make sure you're implementing it. I don't want you just getting pumped up, you know, for the time that you're watching this. This is not a rah-rah session. You know, we break it down, we keep it real, and I'm saying this with love, but I want you to be able to see that growth in your business, not just, you know, be pumped up while you're watching the show.
Yeah, definitely. I think it always helps to have somebody to kind of help you or hold you accountable. Yeah.
Yeah, and that word accountable, what does that mean to you?
Somebody that kind of reminds me to stay on course, or if I do start to waver off, somebody to kind of be like, hey, okay, you know, this is a sign that maybe we need to look at, you know, the things that you're doing. We need to tweak some things. I don't know. I think having a coach for me, and I say it all the time, and some people are like, oh my God, you're always talking about your coach.
Even I say that.
Yeah, but it's
I'm like, hey, don't be talking about me so much.
But it's true. I've seen, and again, I'm so hard on myself, but when I look back in retrospect, I have come such a long way in just a year. But I need somebody to remind me of that because I always just tend to look at the situation as it is at this moment, and then I get really frustrated. But
yeah, and I think also about creating and taking that action step. You know, typically when I work with other coaches, advisors, maybe workshop leaders, you know, they want to generate results really quickly, and we can do that for them, right? But then sometimes there's people who want to create something different. They know that they have this inner calling, they have these gifts, and they just don't know how to organize it and get it all together. And, you know, that's something that I think, you know, there's a different platform where I help them with on that. That's not my main focus, my main target, but I think it's really important for people to see that transformation because otherwise we walk around like zombies. We walk around in that funk,
paralyzed. And I think you know, if I wouldn't have met you, and if I wouldn't have made the decision and the sacrifices to be able to work with you, I would probably be in the same place. I don't even want to think about it. But as I'm growing, I see the potential in our relationship. Like I don't know, and I don't foresee right now there ever being a moment where I won't need you. Because as I'm growing, you're bringing all these different things to the table that I didn't even know were even there that I needed to work on.
Thank
so
you for that.
I see the growth, you know?
Thank you.
Yes.
And before we wrap up, I just want to address a couple things. Number one, I'm just going to rephrase this a little bit because, you know, I don't like to create dependency. Right. And so I look at us as more of partnering together.
Right.
As opposed to a need. And I
yes,
get
and
it.
I don't
It's
need,
word
yes,
yeah.
word choice. Thank you.
And
I'm much more dramatic.
I'm breaking the emotional dependency here.
Yes, and I'm also a creative writer. So for me, I'm much more in touch with the feeling and the needy and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and you're very well, I would say your strength is in writing.
Yes.
And you've come a long way with speaking because this wouldn't have been something that you've done. You've also worked with me at events where you've introduced me. That was something that you wouldn't have done. You've overcome that fear of speaking in front of people. Meeting with, you know, high-level executives. You've done a lot of that too. So I think this is really good for, you know, the growth and the transformation that you've experienced, Rocio. So thanks for sharing that. But also, I think it's important for, and I totally lost my train of thought here where I was going. But basically,
But not being a need, but the growth.
right, creating that growth for yourself, right? That's the basic thing here, and not not having that dependency, but more so following that process, that customized process specifically for you, which is really important. So,
Right.
yeah, there was something else. I lost it. That's all right.
Sorry.
Short-term memory here. But see, you know what? That's not one of my strengths. I don't memorize things. I have a really hard time. Like, we're trying to follow outline for the show. That's really hard for me. Usually I kind of just go with the flow of things. I'm more spontaneous, but I'm learning about spontaneous structure, right?
Oh.
So that's really important. You're a planner. We're
love
opposite
to
there.
plan.
Yeah. So we just work with what we have, what we know, but then also how we can expand upon that too. And that's where things start to flow and come together, and we can do the same for you. So what should we make sure that people, know, Rocio?
Don't be a fart. Make sure you sell from the heart.
All right. Don't be a troll. Sell from your soul. We're here to support you. We love you very much, and blessings.
Bye everyone. I'm trying to say it this straight.